Welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your host, Buddy Sotello, Esquire, and special guest host tonight, along with Evan Ginzburg, is Mike Lano. Mike Lano, would you like to introduce our guest for tonight?
Yep, we are back here again, and our next guest has done everything in the wrestling industry. She's been a great friend of mine for a jillion years, like Evan. And you might recall her, of course, on the nationally syndicated, probably globally, weekly, was it LPWA? She was a board member, an executive board member of the Cauliflower Alley Club, the LIWA, that's when Moolah and Johnny May took it over and ran it. She has wrestled one of the, if I'm not mistaken, one of the first female athletes that Killer Kowalski trained in his prestigious school in the Boston, New England area. She has trained people herself. She's booked. She's promoted. She has done everything. She's also sung in a rock band, so she's got a great life outside of pro wrestling. That's the one and only Brittany Brown. And I'll let you guys ask some questions first before I hog stuff. But tonight I want to talk about it's the last few days of Women's History Month. And I've been talking for weeks. I've been writing, blogging about the inequalities that exist in terms of pay, representation, females in booking. Sure, we've made some great efforts forward, but we're not anywhere close to where we should be with representation and commensurate stuff. So let me throw, Buddy, to you and Evan to ask our guest, Brittany Brown, the great Brittany Brown, women's champion. She's been a champion all over the world as well. Some questions before I get into it.
Yeah, Brittany, couldn't you have found two harder professions than pro wrestling and the music industry?
I suppose I could have, but I've had an awful lot of fun in both of them.
That's what's important.
That's right.
So tell us how you got started in professional wrestling. What were the early influences that got you started?
Well, I used to watch it on television with my father and my sister, and my mother hated it. So the more she hated it, the more we watched it. And I loved the fabulous Moolah so much. I just loved that she was so wise and such a great heel and so sarcastic. So I ended up, when I was like 19 or 20, I ended up seeking her out. And then I started going to her school. I flew myself there on Friday nights and stayed till Sunday nights every weekend. And then went back to work on Monday. So that's how I got my start. And then
where did you grow up?
I grew up in Situate, Massachusetts.
And where was the school at?
Columbia, South Carolina.
Wow, so you'd fly from Massachusetts to Carolina?
Yes, every Friday night.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that is commitment. I used to drive down from Marin County to Hayward, and I thought that was pretty tough drive. Although there was a lot of traffic. Had to deal with a lot of traffic, but that's an amazing amount of commitment there.
Yeah, and when the airlines doubled after about, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 months, airlines was pretty much doubled, and I was 20 years old living on my own, and I found out I was at a body shop getting my Mustang fixed, and I met Tony Santos, who was there with Misty Blue's car, and he got out of his car at the same time I got out of my car, and he looked and said, "Wow, you're a tall one. You should be a wrestler." And I thought he was being a wise guy. I thought he knew who I was, but I didn't know him, and he didn't know me. And he ended up taking me to Killer Kowalski's, and that's where it all began, so to speak.
Now, Kowalski's school is back in Massachusetts, correct?
That's right.
So it's a little ironic that you had to fly
around because he's passed away.
Well, yeah, you had to go all the way down to South Carolina to find a school, and they ultimately, basically in your backyard to go train at. That's really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had no idea he was around here. I mean, I had seen him on TV when I was really, really, really small, maybe before I ever got interested in wrestling. I remember seeing him on television, and my grandmother, I heard, had written him nasty letters. So it's kind of ironic that, several years after my Nana passed away, that I was at the school of the guy that she used to write nasty letters to.
That's pretty impressive. What was it like working with Killer Kowalski?
Oh, it was great, but I'll tell you, he was really, really tough. He did not treat the girls any different than the guys at all.
Or
So,
maybe
we weren't
that's
tickled.
why you had such a great work product, and I know someone that worked with Killer Kowalski too in his school, and said the same sort of thing, that all students were pretty much equal until they proved themselves worthy in Killer Kowalski's eyes. But he was fair with everybody that worked for him.
He absolutely was, yeah. And I was on every single one of his shows. I never missed one show. In fact, I flew home early from a vacation that we all went out on a private jet to this vacation at the Grand Floridian, and I came home a day early on commercial airlines just so I could do his show. So I never once missed any of his shows, and I was his champion for probably 13 years.
Wow.
Mm.
So tell me about, in those 13 years when you were champion, some of your highlight matches, or things that you would consider career highlights while you were working in those shows.
Well, back then when I first started, there was not a whole lot of women. So by the time I ended up winning my first title, which was probably, I don't know, probably a couple, at least 2 to 4 years into my career, I won his IWF Ladies Championship, and we had to find a girl in New York to work against. There wasn't even anyone closer to Massachusetts at the time that was available. So we brought in Babyface Nellie from Brooklyn, New York, and I beat her for the title. And then things kind of opened up a little bit, and there were a little more girls around, but literally it was just a handful. I'm sure Evan and Mike, you guys remember back, late 80s, early 90s, there was not a whole lot of women around.
Right.
Right. So tell me, like, in your opinion, like, who do you watch any of the women wrestling that goes on now, and what is what ladies you enjoy watching, if you do?
Well, I don't really watch that much. However, I have to say the reason why I don't watch that much is because I was watching, and back when they were doing like the bikini matches and that foolishness in WWE, they called them the divas, and they had 2-piece bra and panties and mud wrestling and foolishness like that. I can't follow wrestling if that's what they're going to do. But now, things have changed. When the Bellas came in, and that was a little, not great either, but they ended up being good workers. And a lot of people that started out that weren't that good ended up really becoming good workers, in my opinion. And I think Charlotte Flair has definitely proven that, she's not living off her dad's name, and she can do it in the ring herself. And I think that's a huge step forward for women.
Brittany, I have one question, though. You see, with the men, some of the ugliest human beings on planet Earth, they have beards that look like there's farm life living in them. And meanwhile, every woman who shows up is supposed to be like straight out of Playboy and Penthouse, it seems. So isn't there like some unfair expectations as far as the women's appearance? I just want to see great wrestling. I grew up on Moolah and her crew at Madison Square Garden, and they didn't look like the Bellas, but they had great matches.
Right, I agree, and I think for a while they did do that. They were doing the diva search and all that, and they created wrestlers out of girls that just came there for like modeling gigs or something. But now, I mean, there are, if you've been watching WWE lately, with Nia Jax and a couple of those like Sonya somebody, and they're definitely not out of Playboy.
Okay, but it still seems like they're the exception to the rule, that generally they're looking for the centerfold types, the model types.
Yeah, it seems that way, but I definitely think it has gotten better lately.
Good.
I saw the AEW match last week with those two girls. Dr. Britt Baker, and I forget who the other one was with all the makeup on her face. But that was one of the best matches I've ever seen. I was so shocked. Did any of you see that?
Yeah, the Thunder Rosa. That was the main event. The first time women had the main event of AEW, which is groundbreaking for them. So I might as well just do this and get into the thing here that I wanted to talk about, because there's good and bad. It's like we take a step forward, 2 steps back with the women, in not just in front of the camera but behind. And I'll try to equally throw out stuff to Evan and Buddy. But of course, our guest is women's champion, female who's done everything in wrestling, Brittany Brown. And Brittany, so I watched that. I thought it was great. I have watched Thunder Rosa trained in my neck of the woods, Northern California, and I got to see her from her training before she had matches in front of people on to current, up and down the West Coast, primarily APW, which Evan and obviously Buddy know. And she has just really bloomed and blossomed. And
we also got to see Brittany. I'm sorry, Brittany. We also got to see Bailey start her career.
Pam's her real name, but she was working under, she combined her 2 grandma's names, Davina Rose, although she didn't work in APW. She was working for the competing BTW. But so we had the women's evolution, Britt, like 3 years ago, or 3.5, women's pay-per-view, which was, great. It was groundbreaking, even though, in my mind, that stuff should have happened ages before that. Women should not be like the tokenism thing. And yeah, we went from the bra and panties, horrible matches of Trish Stratus and non-wrestler Stacy Keibler and non-wrestler Tori Wilson had to do, which were really despicable. And so we have this thing now, except since the women's evolution thing and the pay-per-view 3 years ago, they lost, this is WWE, they lost Ronda Rousey, their top draw, who's creating interest in this, and they had that main event with her and Becky Lynch and Charlotte at WrestleMania like over 2 years ago now, or about 2 years ago. But, now it's kind of stifled. And in particular, Ashley Flair, Charlotte Flair, is off TV right now. They, for months, her boyfriend Andrade was asking for his release, and that's never good when a couple, one of them leaves, and usually the other one follows. But in her case, they were pairing her with subpar talent, and I want to know if the 3 of you think, often somebody that's far more gifted or capable can carry their opponents who are not at that level to higher matches, but in the same vein, lower ability wrestlers, female or male, can also bring that person down. And that's what was happening with Charlotte being stuck with that Southern Belle character, who, it's just a total stereotype. And they went to the lowest common denominator. That Ric Flair was walking her down to ringside and managing her instead of his own daughter. And then they, about a month ago, or 5 weeks ago, announced that she was pregnant, and they implied it was Flair's, baby, when everybody, he's married to Fifi the maid, Wendy.
Now I remember why I don't watch WWE anymore.
Exactly. Thank you.
And the other one, they've shown her with her husband and baby, when she was a baby face, because she's alternated, which is the problem with WWE. Every 6 months they flip people, heel and face. So they were going to feud them together. She allegedly was unhappy with being paired with her. And so she was off TV. She was in the middle of the WrestleMania advertising poster for this year. They took her out of that poster, and then they hadn't explained for weeks why she wasn't on TV. She just disappeared. And finally, the one that's going to be replacing her in the main event against Asuka for the women's title at WrestleMania, Rhea Ripley, who they brought in from their farm system, NXT, just dropped the words, Charlotte's not on TV because she's got COVID, which isn't true. And so I posted and sent this to Meltzer and all the rest of them, Wade Keller, et cetera. Oh, is that the best that they could do, in terms of shit booking? We need...
Well, look at the main event.
Yeah.
Look at the main event. So, you can only get... But, yeah, Brittany, I'd like to find out what you think about this sort of writing, and what do you think about this kind of booking, and why is it so difficult for women to get fair roles when they're being booked in something like this?
Well, what I was just about to ask her was, I think we need to have women writing. We need to have women, not just people they pick from soap opera, but women like Beth Phoenix, or somebody that has grown up as a wrestling person, or Brittany Brown has grown up
Let's find out what Brittany thinks.
Yeah, no, I agree with
Hint.
Mike. I agree with Mike for sure. I'd love to see women doing the writing, especially former wrestlers, longtime veteran wrestlers. I think that would be a great idea. I think it is sad that they've brought in people from, soap operas or just people off the street. And then I think, didn't they have Freddie Prinze Jr. in there too?
Yeah, and then they've had some stand-up comics who have, sort of wrestling fans. It doesn't mean they understand the nuances of the business or the intricacies of smart booking. And that's why, they come and go. They've been through a zillion people, from a guy who owned a video store who John A. and I knew out in Long Island, Vince Russo, and Ed Ferrara, who was like a towel guy at Slammer's Gym in Los Angeles. That's, so it's a endless parade of people going in, and I can't even ever recall a single female in booking, let alone try them as a head writer, have them as agents to work specifically with the women to give a better female athletic point of view instead of something just like so denigrating to women. Oh yeah, I slept with Ric Flair, I'm having his baby stuff.
Yeah, I think that's nonsense. And I thought we were so far beyond that. I was very disappointed to see that they were using that angle again. It brought things back to me from 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
That foolishness that they did before when, what was it, Dawn Marie came out and she was pregnant with somebody's father's baby or something.
Tori Wilson's dad. Tori Wilson.
Yeah.
And of course, there's Mae Young giving birth to the Hand, but we'll go even further.
How about less writing and more wrestling? God forbid.
No kidding.
Yeah, you have 3 hours of Raw, and you have 20 or 30 minutes of good wrestling. You have comedy that isn't funny. That's WWE's specialty. Comedy that isn't funny. 27 writers. They have more writers than SNL, and it's ridiculous.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, one thing I'm really happy about is who they have training the women. And I have seen a huge uptick in talent and in skill since Sarah Del Rey was hired to train the women.
Yes.
She's awesome. Let her wrestle.
That's the name I wanted to hear you drop, because I trained with her. I trained with her in All Pro Wrestling. She used to practice her punches and slaps on my face. And
I don't blame her.
Thank you. There's nobody in the world that I am more impressed with her raw level of talent and what she knows about the business than Sarah Del Rey. I'm so glad you mentioned her. She is one of the nicest people. You know her also?
I do. I worked with her before, and she's one of the nicest people I've ever met, and probably the most skilled woman I've ever met. I used to say Judy Martin and Leilani Kai were, and they still are top 3. But I'll tell you, after I worked I've worked with all of them, and I have to say Sarah's the best. And I definitely noticed a huge difference in the work of the girls once she was there and settled and working with them and training them.
Well, I used to call her Sarah the Stiff, because she would just measure out like the ear slap type stuff that she'd doing all the valet stuff, and she would just miss and just clock me and leave me on the floor for 10-20 minutes, because she's incredibly strong. Most people don't understand that, like, she's as strong as a lot of guys are, and that she worked harder than anyone that I'd seen, other than maybe some of the folks like Mark Smith and some of the other folks that she was in that same training class with. But Sarah Del Rey is somebody who really, she will find someone that is willing to work more than someone that has the look. And I think that has really led to why you can have women in main event situations right now in the WWE and make that a credible thing that people are willing to watch.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think if they handed her the pen, I think she would be a great writer. She's certainly a great trainer, and like I said, everybody that's, well, not everybody, but most everybody that's coming out of there is a hell of a lot more high quality than I've ever seen since she started.
And I want to add this too for historian people. So she left with all the guys that left APW to form Iron, Mike Modest, Donovan Morgan's promotion. There, I shot her. She had a match with Nigel McGuinness. Evan might be interested in that. And then, of course, she left for Ring of Honor, where, and I think to this day, unless somebody can correct me, she's still with her partner is Cesaro, formerly Claudio Castagnoli of Ring of Honor, and nobody is better, in the whiff than the Cesaro, in terms of straight wrestling. So if they're still together, that, what a power couple in terms of smartness in the ring and blah, blah.
I just remember when Sarah tore up her knee, and that was in Iron. She'd come out of Japan and she had hurt her knee really badly in a series of matches, and we thought that her career may be over. And she worked 3 times as hard as anyone that I knew to try to bring herself back so that she could then eventually become the WWE head of women's talent. And I think that's the sort of thing that WWE should try to focus more on is how hard a lot of these girls have worked to get to this level, sometimes even harder than most men have had to work, so that they could be part of this business instead of making them just, something cute to look at and something, hot to try to run around the ring with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I honestly thought that part of why she was hired was that she was going to be Sister Abigail. I really thought she was going to be.
Wow.
And I'm surprised that never happened, because I think that would have been great. Be the head trainer and do that as well.
She was brought in, Brittany, with Drake Younger, who is the head male ref. Fortunately, they produced some great female refs there too in NXT, the farm system. But Sarah, her real name is D'Amato. Sarah D'Amato was brought in with Drake from Northern California. The both of them, sadly, with the non-intent, she was not going to wrestle. But I want to move to inequality.
Mike, let me just quickly say this. So you have the best wrestler of the bunch in Sarah Del Rey, and they don't let her wrestle.
Right.
Because she doesn't look like a centerfold. That's the problem right there.
Right. Yeah, that's a big problem. I want to talk about inequality in pay, and I've actually talked to both Sarah and Melissa Anderson, they had some great matches before the split. And Brittany, so I don't know if you've met Melissa, but she's got a very good mind for the biz. She's primarily booking and double booking in terms of bringing American gaijin foreigners over to the Stardom promotion. But inequality of pay. So very briefly, I was on the Busted Open show like a week and a half ago with Britt Baker. They wanted the 2 dentists of wrestling together finally. But I also was part of a call-in thing with her and boxer Mia St. John on Misha Tate, an MMA world champ who had the biggest amount of series with Ronda Rousey in UFC. And they all talked about headlining main eventing cards, in particular on the indie level. Britt and Mia St. John said they main evented shows in their respective industries, but guys, in Mia St. John's case, a young Floyd Mayweather was in the opener. This was like 2004, and he made 11 times what she made, and she was in the main event and had a killer match, and he had a so-so match because he was a green boxer. So we have that in wrestling. What are your thoughts on that? Because hopefully, I don't know how, it's different with pay scale since it's, a worked entertainment thing. Like Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, if it was legit, they should be given incentive monies. And I don't think we have to worry about Tony Khan as much as Vince McMahon, but what are your thoughts on pay inequalities that are still present. I know the women, for the most part, aren't making anywhere near what the guys are making in any of these groups, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if that's true, that they're not making it, then shame on the promoters. Because, like I said, after that match I saw last week, those two women should be making 3 times what the guys are making, because that was the only match in that whole show that kept my attention consistently. And I actually watched it twice. It was that good. And that's saying a lot for me, because I don't think I've ever watched a match twice.
And then the problem was this week, though, and I love the 2 Wednesday shows. You know, we're not particularly intentionally knocking WWE because their NXT product is the one to watch. The other 2 shows you can tape and fast forward through, you know, to get to the good stuff. But NXT is just as, you know, good on other levels than AEW. The 2 Wednesday shows. NXT now is going to move to Tuesdays, which is forcing. We already know Impact is moving to Thursday, so they don't have to compete with NXT. But you know, and it's rough because we're not going to have Thunder Rosa in AEW anymore. She's going back since Billy Corgan, the rock star with Smashing Pumpkins, is getting the Tuesday night NBA stuff going again. But one of the big things, and we talked about this decades ago, you and I, is follow-up. So you have something great, you know, fantastic, out of this world, like Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa. But the next week, just last Wednesday, the week after that event, they kind of blew it in terms of the follow-up. You know, they just had Britt Baker go out and do straight heel stuff, and you know, they just could have done more. I heard a lot of folks like Bully Ray say, "Where was the follow-up?" And you know, if it was the guys, they would have followed up. That were his exact words. And then on a program last Wednesday, I heard this, that I want to see what Evan and Buddy and of course Brittany think of, and I'll shut up. I heard during the AEW broadcast, a female being called a Jezebel. This was last Wednesday, after all the progress they made the week before with that great mane. And then Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, which is about as trite and cliched for 100 years. And this, you know, so fantastic TV. And then we've got, you know, bad follow-up and old verbiage. Let's start with Brittany. What when you hear stuff like that, am I wrong? Does that sound like cliched and sort of anti-woman to call somebody a Jezebel? Maybe 2,000 years ago, I guess, in ancient Greece, when there was somebody named Jezebel.
Right. No, I totally agree with you. What Bully said is right. It should have absolutely had an amazing follow-up to keep people interested, because it's all everyone was talking about, that match. And then what happens the next week? Nothing. And then I agree. Somebody's called a Jezebel. Yeah, that's taking us 10 steps backwards. And I'm sure you guys agree with that, Evan. And I mean, really.
I find WWE TV is penance for sins I committed in previous lifetimes. There's little they do that I enjoy or approve of.
Well, I want to sort of circle back a little bit to your history, because I actually was a really, really, really big fan of the LPWA. I used to record it. I used to watch it back. And I found it to be the first time in my lifetime that women's wrestling started to be taken seriously versus Glow. And not to bash Glow or anything like that. We've had Hollywood on here, and she was fantastic. But the LPWA, I thought, was something special, because to me, that was the first time I had been able to watch women being taken seriously as what they did in the ring, and the moves that they were doing were ones that to me seemed higher impact and executed cleaner and with better types of finishes. What were your thoughts on the LPWA and how that sort of contributed to that?
Well, I totally agree with you. I went and I worked with them a couple of different times. I was asked to go back. I did not go back, but I was proud to work with them, and it was great working with the people I worked with there. I worked with, you know, Heidi Lee Morgan. I worked with Jan Flame. I'm sure you remember that all, Mike. And Peggy Patterson as the Beast, and Candy Divine and Ivory, several of those people. There was Peggy Lee Leather, Bambi, Judy Martin, Leilani Kai, Medusa, and my friend Sheba, the Desert Rose, that used to come out with the original Chic. You know, we had a great time there, and yeah, I wouldn't have been part of it if it was glow like. I would never have done it, because that was not something that interested me at all. But LPWA, I totally agree with you. That was the start of something good, and I think it really stinks that it never, you know, continued.
Remember that story I told you? Then I know Evan wants to say something. I was in Japan. It was the day before the WCW Dome show. So it was March of 1991. And I'm there with the Jumping Bomb Angel, the Tor Berg, the owner, creator,
Yep.
low monetary payer of LPWA. He had basically told her, retire from All Japan Women. I'll bring you in as a star, make you champion, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm at her retirement show with Meltzer. You know, I was there already 3 weeks, and then Meltzer came in just for these two last shows. And this was the one that Debbie Malenko, Debbie Drake, you know,
Yep.
real name. But she debuted on this at Corkin Hall at this thing. So her name escapes me now, that Jumping Bomb Angel, the lead one. But she retires. She's in the dressing room. It's completely full of flowers backstage. You know,
Wow.
the elaborate retirement ceremony where they tossed her up in the air and all of that. She gets a call from Tor Berg, and he said, "Oh, we ran into some money problems. I really can't bring you in." And she cried and sobbed. Her parents were back there for like 5-10 minutes that this guy had effed her over.
Wow.
And that was why she retired, you know, because
Wow.
he promised her the world and all this money. And what's the reason that you left? Because the thing that obviously differentiated Glow, you know, these women had like 2 weeks of training. I love all of those women. I keep in touch with them. They're friends, but I've told them, you know, the show is basically just a parody of WWF. And you know, nobody other than Lisa Moretti had any, you know, training or anything like that. You know, some of them
Right.
saw training after, like Hollywood, Jeannie Basson, and Cheryl Russo, they saw training. But
Yep.
LPWA, they were all established, true lady wrestlers like yourself. What, you know, is it okay to talk about why you left? Was it just, you know, the money was not there that you were promised, or what was going on?
Oh, no, that wasn't it at all. It wasn't about money. It was actually about my outfits. My full body unitards that I wore, they did not like those. And they lied to me and told me over the telephone, they told me if I would not wear those anymore, then they'd give me a shot against Sue Green, or not Sue Green, Sue Sexton for the title. And I said, nope, that's what I wear. That's what I'm going to wear. So then they said that some of the girls complained that they were slipping off my outfit when they did monkey flips. And I said, well, you're talking to the wrong person then, because I remember every move I do in every match. Every match I did there was not one monkey flip. Click. That was the end of that.
Wow. Wow. What did they want you to wrestle in? I mean, the Giant Gonzalez's old outfit? I mean, what?
Probably
what
something skimpier, and she was
Exactly.
holding to her values.
Exactly.
Can I throw something in? I was going to Madison Square Garden in 1974. Moolah would come out. You know, she wrestled women that looked like truck drivers, and it wasn't about sex. It wasn't about skimpy outfits. It was about two great athletes, you know, competing for a belt. Moolah had unbelievable heel heat, and people took it seriously. This is exactly what I'm saying. You know, when they, you know, feel they have to sex it up, how about just having two great athletes having a great match?
Exactly. And that's all I've ever been interested in. And to be honest with you, there is no way, no matter what my values are, which we all know what they are, but even if I didn't have that, I would just not be comfortable wearing a two-piece skimpy outfit. I mean, I would be afraid that, you know, it's going to break or, you know, something. I don't know how these people do it. I don't know why they do it or how they do it. But to me, wearing
Sex sells.
yeah, exactly. So that's something that's not the business I got in, was for that. I got into it to be a professional wrestler, and I wouldn't wear anything in front of anybody there that I wouldn't wear in front of my father. So my father came to every one of my matches, and I'm not wearing something skimpy.
Respect.
Now, do you feel that sort of the growth of women in other sports areas has helped maybe garner more respect for women in wrestling? Like, for instance, in the MMA, like Ronda Rousey, for example, and her toughness demonstrated in MMA. Is that translating over to women being taken more seriously in pro wrestling?
I think it could be, but then when they do those foolish things that they do with the, the two-piece outfits and the skimpiness and the prancing around and, the seductive getting in and out of in between the ropes and all that, then it just takes it backwards again. So how do you take it seriously when you start to see, like Mike said, a couple of steps forward, but then 5 steps back? So then what do you do?
Because
talking about the Madison Rain and the Beautiful People gimmick, where they would pretend to make out when they'd go through the ropes, and then at the very last minute they would stop. Like, there's no call for that. Why not, as Evan said, have it just like that, or what you did, and you often were wrestling women that you trained, like a Brandy Alexander or about a jillion other women that you also got into WCW. I should also point out, to her credit, Brittany Brown was a major part of that series on Fox where they showed wrestling secrets, before Vince McMahon exposed the entire business. I don't know if there was multiple episodes.
Is that the one that Mike Modest was on?
Maybe, but Brittany was there at Killer Kowalski's school. And Brittany, do you remember who else was on that thing? Was it like Perry Saturn and Cronus, or who else was on that thing?
Oh, yeah, we all were. There was a whole bunch of us from Kowalski's on there. And I think even Triple H was on one of them that I was on, because they came not only to the school, but they also came to a live show and taped that as well.
And tell people, too, didn't you help? We were there with her in Vegas for Moolah's LIWA with Johnny Mae Young, but a young Joni Lauer with her short, shoulder-length red hair, who was like begging and wanted some way, was asking me and you how to get to Japan and stuff. And she was very shy, but she came after you quite a bit of time after you at Kowalski School. Tell us about some of your experiences with Joni, too. That's a tragic story.
Yeah, it is. It's a very sad story. I'll tell you, she came much after I did, after I left. And I went to see one of Walter's show after I no longer was working for him because he cut the pay. And so I was making like 5 times more than what he was paying at that point from people in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So that's where I was working mostly. And I went to see one of his shows in Mass with Joni on it, and she had my old belt. And I watched her work, and I just left in disgust because she was horrible, absolutely horrible. And I'm just still to this day so shocked at what she became and how much better, how much harder she worked to become what she really did, because I never would have expected it. If you saw her then, you never, ever would have expected that she would have become what she became.
Yeah, she was pretty great, even in Vegas, too. And that.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. I booked that show. Johnny May and Moolah asked me to book that show for the first and only time they asked me. And I booked it. And they said, oh, no, we got to put Joni in a singles match. And I said, absolutely not. Just 3 weeks ago, I went to Kowalski's, and it was a cluster, you know what. And Pat Patterson was there, so they wanted her in a singles match. And I said, nope, you told me I was booking. Well, I said, I'll put her in a battle royal, that's it. She goes in the battle royal, she breaks a girl's nose.
Wow.
And Mike, I think you were there that night. It was Angie Janae. Do you remember her?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So she broke someone's pelvis and broke someone's nose. and someone's nose was Angie Janae, who was a very nice girl, sweetheart from California, good worker.
And she looked better with her original nose.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think Joni kind of screwed her nose up. But it was really sad, you know, and I told them, I said, I don't think she should be wrestling at all. But they wanted Pat Patterson to see her. And, you know, that isn't how she got discovered anyways. You know, but they wanted to be part of her being discovered, and that really wasn't it.
So where do you think that the future of women's wrestling is headed? Is it more, you know, women facing women? Is it women facing men? Is it women and men facing each other in mixed tag matches? Is it, where do you think that the greatest future for women's wrestling is headed, in your thoughts?
Well, I'm hoping it's not women and men. I did my fair share of mixed tags, and it wasn't my favorite thing to do. I had nothing against it, but I really just feel like women's singles matches and women's tag matches, I'd like to see more of that. And I definitely would like to see, I would love to see more all-women pay-per-views. But I think you have to have the right talent. And if you're just throwing girls in there to make a pay-per-view, to have enough girls to make a pay-per-view, then I think you're making a mistake. But if you have well-trained women that know what they're doing, and you have some good writing and good gimmicks and good follow-ups, then I think I'd like to see an all-women show. I would. I'd love it.
Well, Brittany, I think if you had like old school, only 6 or 7 matches where they all meant something, where it built to something, where the titles were important, they could do a legitimately good pay-per-view because they have enough talent. It's when you have 14 matches and 87 people where it becomes a cluster, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think 6 or 7, I mean, 6 would be perfect. But like Mike said at the beginning, you know, women writers, writers with experience, you know, I would love to see that. And on a side note, I'm really happy with what Paul from Walter School, Paul Levesque, has done with NXT. I'm really proud of him. I love that he made it. I don't believe that he made it because he married Stephanie. He made it before he married Stephanie. He's a great worker. He had a great look, a great work ethic, and you know, he's behind getting women to move forward as well. I believe that. What do you guys think about that? Do you think he's had a pretty strong hand in getting the women moving forward?
Yeah, well, the excellence part of NXT is because he stresses the wrestling, and that's a conversation I've had with Bully Ray privately, where he said, well, the WWE shows, the Raw and the SmackDowns, the focus is on the entertainment, whereas Paul Levesque's, Triple H's NXT, the focus is on the word wrestling. So when indie guys can come in and they pick cream of the crop, they can utilize a lot of them, like Ricochet, their regular names that they used elsewhere, you know, through their great careers.
Yep.
And they can do all that. He allows them to do all of that. They can even, like Eli Drake, can cut his old Impact and Ring of Honor type promos. However, which you see now, Britt Baker's taken his 3-pointing thing where he would do Eli Drake with his hand, you know, moving from left to right. She's now catapulted using that, and she admitted to me that's where she got it from, DMD, her particular type of dental degree. But the problem is when they bring them up to the main roster, whether it's the guy with all that Olympic MMA experience, the surfer dude, the original bro guy, I can't think of his name now, or any of the others, or the African-American guy that was so awesome in NXT, the big, huge guy that can move around like a junior heavyweight. They saddle them with the sort of Pat Patterson type wrestling, which Vince loved, the entertainment stuff. And I was a friend of Pat's, but not of that, you know, humor and wrestling stuff. They are no longer themselves. So Levesque has them at their peak, and sadly, the way they're booked and utilized, and really the only person that's standing out thankfully it's a female, Bianca Belair, seems to have the potential for the women. She's not been dragged down now that she's on the SmackDown show. And, hopefully she'll continue to be, there's a person when she retires, if we can't have Brittany Brown, somebody like that, get a 6-figure deal to come in and be an agent and a scriptwriter. Natty Neidhart she could fill that position, any one of those holes, being a booker, writer. She's intelligent. She still has 5-star ability when they allow her to work instead of jobbing her.
Right.
Let me hold up something because I know, Brittany, I have to go. But, buddy, I hope you can get this. This is in the Dental Journal, Dental Products Report. I just got it.
It's my favorite magazine.
Paul White is in this ad for a dental product, and he's got his head is on a full pager. So, buddy, can you see this thing?
Yeah.
Well enough. Yeah, I mean, it's the giant. You should be able to fit it in there.
I recognize his molar.
So, but that's the thing too, and actually, I am going to push AEW because when you look at their women's roster, Akira Shida, the female champion, all the women they're bringing in from Japan, and NWA champion, all this crossover stuff is amazing. They have, perhaps the characters aren't as strong as like a Bayley or a Sasha Banks or Alexa Bliss or something, but they're using either actually, I think most of them are using their real names, and that's refreshing. I mean, the guys in WWE, so many of them have their real names, and yet the women have all these ridiculous porn names. Alexa Bliss, at least they didn't call her Siri. If they're going to steal a name from an electronic cell phone assistant, in Alexa, that's where they got Alexa's first name. They just let them have their real names and let them be wrestlers is how at least I'll shut up and end this. I don't know if Brittany agrees. Real names, real pro wrestling, even though it's whatever with the finishes, but let them do what they can do in NXT.
I have such great memories of seeing Sue Green at the Garden. Nice and simple. Sue Green, right?
I totally agree.
It's simple, easy, and when you make it complicated, you ruin it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'd definitely like to see that with the women for sure.
Oh, and let's let Brittany plug away now because she and I both have to go. But Brittany Brown, let's let you plug away any charities, anything you've got going on, whether it's wrestling, whether it's music, or what have you.
Oh goodness, all I do now is I'm just on Facebook. That is it. And, I send out some autographed photos and things like that a couple of times a week from Facebook, but that's pretty much all I'm doing. And I did have a promoter that runs scripted matches that they videotape and sell out of Connecticut. He contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in training the women in Connecticut this summer. I don't know if that's something I'm going to do. I told him I'd get back to him by April 15th. So we'll see. We'll see what's happening. I'm thinking about it, but I'm not so sure about it.
And nobody could convince you to get back in the ring again, could they?
Well, I've been asked. I get asked quite a bit. I had a promoter in Pennsylvania. He winters in Florida and summers in Pennsylvania, and he's going to be back in Pennsylvania. And he's called me a couple of times. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm thinking about it, but not the greatest chance.
I winter in Marin and I summer in Marin. That's kind of been my plan in the last year. I don't get around as much as I used to. But how would our fans get a hold of you if they wanted to get a hold of you?
Well, my biggest presence is definitely Facebook. I do have Twitter, and they could also, if anyone needed to email me, they could email me at BrittanyBrown1@AOL.com.
And do you think you might have plans for a book or a tell-all or maybe some kind of a video like thing? The books are big now these days. We've got our friend Kenny Casanova who's been helping a lot of authors.
Well, Evan's got a book, his own autobiography coming out, his second book.
Short story collection, yep. And I just want to mention that in our movie 350 Days, Wendy Richter talks about the trials and tribulations of being a woman wrestler. And in one part she says, how could I possibly have a baby? Where would I put her, on the ring apron? I was on the road every night of the week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I saw that, and that was very well done,
Oh,
Evan.
thank
Very
you.
nice. Thank you.
Thank
It was wonderful. Yeah, no, I agree with her. It's not something I ever did. I wrestled for 28 years. I don't have any children, and I agree with her. Even though I didn't do it full time, I work full time in insurance at the same time that I wrestled. And now I still just work in insurance, and very possibly might be training the girls, but we'll see.
There you go.
Well, you've been a wonderful guest tonight. Really have appreciated you very much. I know that Mike's got to go, and we don't want to keep you too busy on a Saturday night, but we really appreciate you spending time with us, and we'd really love to have you as a guest in the future on our show, especially if you have any new projects or things that you have coming in the works that you'd like to publicize to our guests.
I'll make her, because Evan knows she was a regular on Legends Radio. We had her on many times.
Yeah. Mike, how's the Giants' teeth doing?
You mean Paul White, the Giant?
Yeah, Paul White. Yeah, how's his teeth doing?
Well, he's got an underbite. I'm looking at them right now.
I was concerned about that. Yeah.
It's like Flair. I told Flair, I must have told him a million times, that one lateral incisor. It's called tooth number 7. We talk in our dentistry. As I talk with Britt Baker, we have a carny in dentistry. I could throw out stuff like a class 5 foil or alginate or distal buccal, lingual, and people don't know what we're talking about. But Flair has that one inset lateral incisor next to his 2 front teeth, or central incisors. I must have told him a million times, we could do a nice laminate on that.
Dentist, coast to coast. That'll be our new show.
My oldest friend, Scott Bernstein's a dentist. I know this guy 40 years. I'm going to have to send him a tape of this. He'll love this. The link. He's getting the link to this. He won't care about the wrestling.
Brittany Brown's got perfect teeth, so it goes with her perfect skills.
It's not easy to do, to go through wrestling without, keeping all your teeth intact. I know a few wrestlers who have chipped quite a few and gotten a few knocked out within a straight elbow.
Oscar got hers kicked by the legit MMA badass shooter, what's her name? Shayna Baszler, kicked out, actually hit her legit in the mouth, and it was one of her lateral incisors that flew out. So that's why
Ox Baker said Lou Thez knocked out several of his teeth in one match.
Oh my gosh.
Several. Yeah.
So we're glad you're still in one piece. We really appreciate it.
Right.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you so much for being on our show, and we'll have you on again soon. All right, that's it for this week, everyone. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.